Statistics for Economics, chapter number 4, that is presentation of data. So you have already learned in the previous chapters, how data are collected and how you are organizing the data and how you are classifying the data. So why are we doing all this? Because data are they are generally voluminous, which means they are huge in amount, and they need to be put in a compact and presentable form. So this chapter will deal with presentation of the data precisely, so that the voluminous data collected could be made usable readily. We are presenting data in a precise form so that it can be made use for it can be made usable very readily at the very constant, and they are easily comprehended, so that we are able to understand easily what is given. That is why we are presenting a data in a precise form. So studying this chapter should let you know how to present data using tables and to represent data using appropriate diagrams. By using tables, diagrams, we will be able to represent the voluminous data into a compact and presentable form, so that we can draw meaningful conclusion from the data given. So there are generally three forms of presentation of data. That is, number one is textual or descriptive presentation. Second is tabular presentation, diagrammatic presentation. So in textual or descriptive presentation, you will not use any tables, diagram. In tabular presentation, you will present the data in a tabular form, in table. And in diagrammatical presentation, you will represent the data through various diagrams, maybe through the graph, through the pie diagram, frequency, and all those things. So in textual presentation of data, let us go to the first one. So in this presentation, data are described within the text itself. So the data or the information that is to be given are presented or described in the text itself, through the text. So let us say, for example, let us say example of a textual representation, case 1. So I'm giving you an example through a text of a textual presentation. So in a ban call given on 8 September 2005, protesting the hike in price of petrol and diesel, 5 petrol pumps were found open and 17 were closed, whereas 2 schools were closed and remaining schools were found open in a town of Bihar. So that is a data presented through a text, as you can see from here. So this is a case of a textual presentation of data. So the data is given in the text itself. Case number 2. So Census of India 2001 reported that Indian population has risen to 102 crore, of which only 49 crore were females against 53 crore males. So 74 crore people resided in rural India and only 28 crore live in towns or cities, while there are 62 crore non-worker population against 40 crore workers in the entire country. So in both this case 1 and case 2, data have been presented only in a text. So data are presented in the form of text or through the text. So what is a serious drawback of this textual presentation of data? So serious drawback of this method is that one has to go through the completed, or we have to go through the complete text to understand or to make a comprehension of what is given. So you have to read from beginning till the end so that you are able to comprehend the data given. So that is the main drawback. But data, or we are presenting the data so that we are able to draw comprehension at a very short time period, so that we just look at it and we are able to give conclusion, or you are able to understand what is given there. So the next is tabular presentation of data. So in the next form of presentation of data, the data, or in a tabular presentation, data are presented in rows, which we read horizontally, and also columns read vertically. So we are presenting the data in a rows or columns. That is tabular presentation of data. So look at the example of table 4.1. So data are presented in a tabular form here. So informations, so about literacy rates, sex, male and female, location, and all those are given in a tabular form. So this is an example of a tabular representation of a data. So the most important advantage of tabulation is that it organizes data, for further statistical treatment and decision making. So which is much more easier to understand. So again, in tabular presentation of data, classification used in tabulation is of four kinds. There are mainly four kinds of classification that we again use in tabular presentation of data. One is qualitative, second one is quantitative, third one is temporal, and the last one is spatial. So these are the four main classification used in tabulations to present data in a tabular form. So first, qualitative classification. So qualitative would mean when classification is done according to attributes such as social status, physical status, nationality, etc. So it is classified, or it is classification when classification is done according to the attributes, not the how do we say, those quantitative things or attributes would mean which are somehow abstract. So when classification is done through all that, through attributes, it is called qualitative classification. So example of qualitative classification is table 4.1 again. So here we are, giving the information of, male and female, and then, the literacy rate, rural and urban. So these are all attributes, the sex, male and female, and then literacy level, the rural and urban. Those are all, they are attributes. And that is an example of a qualitative classification. So the next classification used in tabular presentation is quantitative classification. So in this quantitative classification, data are classified on the basis of characteristics, which are quantitative in nature. So the data are classified into the basis of characteristics that are, quantitative in nature, which means it can be measured quantitatively. So table 4.2 is the example of quantitative classification. We are measuring distribution of 542 respondents by their age in an election study in Bihar. So age group, number of respondents, and percentage, they are all, the characteristics of, measurement we can measure in quantity. Measurement in quantity is possible in this example. So that is an example of a quantitative classification. So age, height, production, income, etc., they are all quantitative characteristics, and we all know that classes are formed by assigning limits called class limits for the value of the characteristic under consideration. So the next one is temporal classification. So in this temporal classification, time becomes classifying variable, and data are, categorized according to time. So it may be weeks, months, years, etc. And data are, classified according to this time. So table 4.3 is a example of, temporal classification in years. We are measuring yearly sales of a tea shop from 1995 to 2000. So years, we are classifying the sales, that is the data in the category of years. So we are measuring the sales in different years, that is from 1995 to 2000. So we are giving the data with the help of the year. That is an example of a temporal classification. The last one is spatial classification. So when classification is done on the basis of place, it is called spatial classification. So when classification is done on the basis of place, region, it can be block, district, state, country, it is called spatial classification. So table 4.4 is an example of spatial classification, and we are giving the data of export share according to a country. So destination USA, Germany, these are all place name, and we are giving the information of export share data with the help of the place, that is countries. So that is the example of a spatial classification when data are classified according to the places. So the next topic is in tabulation of data, or in presenting the data in the form of table. What are the components, what are the items that are included? So parts of a table, here there are actually 8 parts of table, that is table number, title of the table, captions or column headings, stubs or row headings, and then body of the table, units of measurement, the sources, node. So these are all the parts of table. So what is a table number? It's all about, so it is assigned, this table number is assigned to a table for identification purpose only. So there might be many tables given there, but table number is given so that we are able to identify between different table. So we are able to distinguish one table from another with the help of table number. Table number can be in the form of whole numbers like 1, 2, 3, and it can even use subscripted numbers like 1.2, 3.1, etc. So table 4.5 would mean should be read as fifth table of the fourth chapter. 4.5 would mean fifth table of chapter number 4. So those are the example of table number. So title. So the title of table narrates about the contents of the table. So it is the title that is given in the table that will narrate the contents of the table, what is given in the table. The next is captions or column headings. The horizontal or at the top of each column in a table there are given titles. So designation is given to explain the figures of the column. So figures are given. So on top of the figure, captions or column headings is given to explain the figures given in the column. And similar to that, a stubs or row heading is also given on top of the figures, so that it will explain the figures given in the row. And the most important part is body of a table. So body of a table is the main part of the table, and it actually contains the actual data that is given. So unit of measurement. So unit of measurement of the figures in the table, actual data should always be stated along with the title. So if different units are there for rows or columns of the table, these units must be stated along with stubs or captions. So if figures are large, they should be rounded up, and the method of rounding should be indicated. And the last second is source. So second last item or parts of table is sources. So it is a brief statement or phrases indicating the source of data, from where you are getting that data, which will from which sources, from which document, from which book did you get that data. So this source will tell you. The last one is node. So node is the last part of the table, and it explains the specific feature of the data content of the table, which is not self-explanatory and it has not been explained earlier. So those are some of the parts of table. So this is the example of a table which will give all the parts of the table. That is, this is the table number, this is the title of the table, and then this is the column headings, workers, man, marginal, total, and then row headings are all urban and rural, and then this is the body of the table, which is the main part, and this is the units, that is crore.